Ever had an unhinged client? I bet you have. Stay tuned.
This episode of Keeping It Real is brought to you by Real Geeks. How many homes are you going to sell this year? Do you have the right tools? Is your website turning soft leads into interested buyers? Are you spending money on leads that aren't converting? Well, Real Geeks is your solution. Find out why agents across the country choose Real Geeks as their technology partner. Real Geeks was created by an agent for agents. They pride themselves on delivering a sales and marketing solution so that you can easily generate more business. Their agent websites are fast and built for lead conversion with a smooth search experience for your visitors. Real Geeks also includes an easy-to-use agent CRM. So once a lead signs up on your website, you can track their interest and have great follow-up conversations. Real Geeks is loaded with a ton of marketing tools to nurture your leads and increase brand awareness. Visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod and find out why realtors come to Real Geeks to generate more business. Again, visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod. And now, onto our show. Today's episode is brought to you by Corded.io. Are you looking for agents to join your brokerage or team? Now, as a real estate recruiter, I can tell you the answer is always yes. But most agents aren't looking to move right now. So how do you know who to contact? Well, what if I were to tell you there's a recruiting and retention tool powered by artificial intelligence that shows you exactly which agents in your local market are looking to leave their brokerage right now and which agents at your own firm are also looking to leave you? Now, I've been recruiting realtors for 15 years and I've hired over 2,000 agents. I can tell you with no exaggeration, this is the tool I've been waiting for. Corded's AI looks for trends across dozens of variables for each agent in your market and shows you which agents they believe are likely to move. Not only does it do that, but Corded's AI went and visited my recruiting website and read everything I offer. So now when I'm recruiting, Corded's AI tells me exactly what to say based on that agent's needs and what my brokerage can offer. It even writes emails for me. I've never seen anything like it, and I use it every single day. Now, if you are looking to grow your brokerage, Corded.io is the best tool out there. Visit Corded.io to schedule a demo. Again, that's Corded.io. And now, onto the show. Hello and welcome to Keeping It Real, the largest podcast made by real estate agents and for real estate agents. My name is DJ Paris. I am your guide and host through the show. Today is a very special episode for us here at Keeping It Real. We have best-selling author Marisa Kashino, and she is a fiction writer and wrote an amazing book that everybody needs to read called Best Offer Wins. And it is funny, it is dark, it is thrilling. If you liked Gone Girl, you're going to love this. It's a very big deal. It's on all sorts of awards. It's won a bunch of awards, and it's on all sorts of book lists. So we're going to be talking with Marisa about how this book came to be. It's her very first novel, and she is crushing it, and is even currently being optioned for a television deal as well. So this is awesome. It's our first time interviewing a fiction writer talking about the real estate business. You will love this book. I'm reading it right now, and it's so great. I love it. So check it out. Best Offer Wins on Amazon, anywhere you find books, of course. And let's just get right to, before I get to Marisa, one last thing. I just built you guys a tool I want you to check out. I want you to go to joinkale.com/one-thing. joinkale.com/one-thing. What is this? I built an AI tool. Well, a tool to help you with your AI prompts. So it basically is going to help you identify the biggest problem right now in your real estate practice. By the way, this whole tool takes 30 seconds. It's super fast. You're going to say, here's my biggest problem, and it's going to ask you a few quick questions, and then it's going to give you an AI prompt that you copy and paste into the AI system that you are currently using. And it is a long prompt. This is a big prompt because we know that agents really don't often understand how to write great prompts to get great results. This is going to do that for you, totally free. My gift to you. Please check it out. Let me know what you think. joinkale.com/one-thing. And now, onto my conversation with Marisa Kashino.
Marisa Kashino is our guest today, and this is a real departure for us. And first type of episode we've done like this in close to, well, over 700 episodes now. But she is the author. In fact, I will tell you how I became aware of you. We received, and you don't know this, I don't think, and I'm going to introduce you in just a moment, but we received a anonymously sent book in the mail that was to our office here. And we occasionally, because of my podcast, I get sent books, and there's usually information about it, or it's for a guest I'm going to be having on the show. And in this case, there wasn't that, or maybe there was, and that part got thrown away before it got handed to me. But I got handed this novel, and I thought, oh, this is cool. And then we realized, oh, this is probably a marketing thing. They're sending it to real estate companies or real estate brokerages. And I saw this and I said, I have to have Marisa, the author, on our show. So I want to introduce to you to Marisa. This is, again, a complete change for us, where we're normally interviewing top agents, but now we're interviewing a top best-selling author, Marisa Kashino. She is the author of Best Offer Wins, which, by the way, isn't just a book that has a great title that we think our audience would love, but she is also a legitimately accredited author. She is a Good Morning America book club pick. So GMA says this is the book to read. She's also, by the way, not just a best-selling author. She's in development right now with Hulu for a TV series about this exact topic and other things too. She's a big deal. She's previously a journalist, most recently at Washington Post, also a very big deal. She spent the bulk of her career at Washingtonian Magazine, which is a citywide magazine, writing long-form features, overseeing the real estate and home design coverage. She's worked with a lot of agents. She grew up near Seattle, graduating from University of Washington with a degree in journalism and poli-sci. She now lives in DC area with her husband, 2 dogs, 2 cats. I also have 2 cats. Best Offer Wins, which was published in 2025. Get this, her very first novel. So I'm going to give you some of the accolades in addition to Good Morning America. It's a USA Today bestseller. A Good Housekeeping named it as their book club pick. I mentioned Good Morning America. Elle Magazine Best Mystery Thriller of 2025, and Book Riot Best Mystery Thriller of 2025. Marisa, follow Marisa on her Instagram, Marisa Kashino. You'll find her on IG. We'll send a link to that in the show notes. It's just her name. And we will have a link to her book. Everybody needs to buy this on Amazon. So link in the show notes. Marisa, welcome to the show.
Wow. Well, thank you. That is quite a welcome. I don't think anyone has given me an introduction like that other than my own mother, probably. But thank you so much.
Well,
it's wonderful to be here.
Everybody's a best-selling author, except they're not really. And you actually are. So I am very excited. And I wanted to give you the proper respect that this novel deserves. And also, congratulations on being your debut novel and having
Thank
such
you.
a really lightning in a bottle sort of situation. So, good luck. And we're really excited to see your trajectory and follow your career. And so our audience, again, they're realtors. I know you're not a realtor. And so we're not going to tell our agents how to become better agents, but we will sort of talk a little bit about your experience as a buyer and seller. You've bought and sold 3 properties. So you're not totally, even though this is your first book, you've had experience with realtors, and you've interviewed realtors for the Washingtonian Magazine and just in your journalism exploits. But let's get into writing. When did you know? I want to know when you knew you wanted to be a writer, and maybe that's journalist, maybe that's novelist. When was it? What was the age?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So I will say I never ever thought I would write fiction. I never once said I'm going to be a novelist. To me, that sounded about as plausible as saying I was going to be like a princess,
Sure.
or like a Broadway actress or something. But I've always loved to write. I don't really remember a time when I didn't like to write. I think I accredit a lot of it to being, for the most part, an only child. So I had a lot of like time to like make up stories, and I spent a lot of time as a kid reading and writing. And when you got to those years in elementary school and people started asking, what do you want to do when you grow up, I just said journalist, because I thought that was what you did if you wanted to be a writer. So I decided from a very early age to be a journalist. I declared my major the second I walked in the door at college.
Wow.
And I thought I would be a journalist forever. So the fact that I'm now sitting here talking to you about having written a novel is very surprising to me, and it's been this really fun, unexpected turn of events,
And so
in the past couple of years. Yeah.
you always were writing about real things, and now you're writing about not real things. So that is a totally different part of the brain and a totally different skill set. And what's amazing is that you've proven yourself in the journalism world, which not easy. Certainly, journalist is a tough job because you're constantly piping out content and really having to speak to that particular audience. And now you've written for a totally different. I mean, I guess there's crossover, but a totally different audience in a totally different style that is foreign to you and not something you ever thought you'd do. So, and by the way, you wrote this book in 3 months, which is like just incredible. And obviously there's rewrites and things
to be
like that.
very clear, yeah, I wrote a first draft in 3 months. It took longer to make it into a good book, but yeah, that's right.
How important, I do want to talk about the editing process, because to me, the way I think about editors is, and I've written for publications before, and having an editor's was critical
Hmm.
because they were able to take my work, which was usually in the humor space, and make it punchier, tighter. But I was just talking about this with my fiance. It was very difficult for me because I was a blogger just writing my own stuff for many years, and I had a decent following, and I didn't have anyone telling me this isn't funny enough or you need to make this, a different. But when I did find an editor, they did make it better in every case, but it was very difficult for me to accept that feedback. So as a
Mm.
journalist, you've worked with editors, so you understand that process. Was it difficult though with a fictional tale, something you were really creating from your own brain? Was it difficult to work with an editor?
Not at all. So I will say I actually was an editor myself at the tail end of right before I sold the book. I was an editor at the Washington Post. So I know from firsthand experience how critical editing is and how, a good editor can really elevate your writing. So no, I have a great editor. My fiction editor is Ryan Doherty at Celadon. That's my publisher, and he's awesome. And what I really love about him, and what I always actually tried to do myself when I was editing journalism, was to not be too prescriptive about the edit, but to just sort of tell the writer, like, here are the 4 or 5 things that I think need to be punched up, or that are missing, or that I think we need to draw out. Make this emotion bigger, or make this part quieter, or whatever, and then let the writer kind of figure out the specific kind of path to follow from there. So that's how Ryan edits. I actually think he and I are pretty similar editors. So it was a pretty painless experience, actually. And I will say I was very lucky to have my pick of a few different editors. There were a few different publishers that wanted the book when I was selling it, and I had meetings with all of them, and was very lucky to meet a lot of really impressive book editors. But I had a good vibe and a good feeling about Ryan from the jump. So I'm really glad that it worked out the way that it did.
The reason I'm talking about editing is because I see them as coaches, and
For sure.
oftentimes the most successful agents and agents even who are starting out think maybe I should get a coach. In fact, the most
Hmm.
successful agents I know, they all have coaches, or almost all of them. Almost everyone I've interviewed on this show has had coaches, which we would put an editor in a similar category to a coach. So I think
Yeah.
it's important to know that a successful editor like yourself, who might be more difficult to edit for because of your editing experience. It might be even harder for you to say, well, I wouldn't have edited it this way because you've had that role. But yet you're obviously very coachable, and you have to be as a writer, I suspect.
Yeah, I don't think there's any weakness in that at all. I think
No.
actually, when you can accept that oftentimes when you're in the weeds yourself on something, you can no longer see it. It's hard to see the full picture, once you're really down in the weeds yourself.
Would
So
this
having a coach on the sidelines able to point some of that stuff out to you is extremely helpful, I think.
did the editor Ryan, did he make the book better?
Yeah, yes, definitely. He made the book better.
Yeah,
And I will say, in the publishing industry, agents are also sort of the first edits too.
sure.
Like when I first got my book agents, they also read the manuscript and gave me some, ideas to make it better before we started shopping it around to publishers. That's just sort of how the process works. So my agents also made it better. I mean, I
Yeah.
think You can have too many cooks in the kitchen for sure, but if you find the right, kind of the right smart people to bring into the fold, I think it's always for the better, to have an outside perspective,
Yeah, and
especially on something as personal as a book, like when you sometimes lose the big picture yourself.
yeah, I'm hammering this point hard because I want our audience to really realize that even successful editors and writers like Marissa have coaches, right? And so realtors need this. I've interviewed a ton of former collegiate athletes, professional athletes who left their sports career to then go on to become real estate agents or real estate professionals. They all got coaches because they're all
Hmm.
used to being coached. And it's one of those things that I think, as you said, it made your book better. Obviously, you're having tremendous success with it, and that came from you, but somebody to help you see the things you don't see, that you can't see from that third person perspective is so
For sure.
critical. So I'm glad that was been your experience. Let's talk about the book. Okay.
Great.
So tell us about Best Offer Wins. What is it about?
So best offer wins is about the particular hell of trying to buy a home in a very, very competitive housing market. So it takes place in the post-pandemic market. It's like the 2022-ish time period when the housing market all over the country was just going bonkers. Interest rates were nothing. The banks were giving away mortgages, and everybody was so sick of looking at their same four walls, right? So the book starts out with Margot, our main character. She and her husband are trapped in a small apartment. They have been outbid on 11 different homes. They've been trying to buy a house for 2 years now. Margot is at her breaking point, and you'll also learn that she actually has a little bit of an obsessive tendency to begin with. So she's kind of like the very worst buyer to push too far. So she gets a tip about a house that is not yet on the market, but it's going to be listed in a month. And it's like the perfect house, perfect neighborhood, checks all the boxes. And she decides she's going to figure out a way to get that house before it is publicly listed and the masses can descend upon it and outbid her once again. So she basically endeavors to worm her way into the lives of the homeowners and convince them to sell to her. And when that doesn't go quite as planned, her tactics sort of escalate from there and get more and more extreme and unhinged. And you are in her head for the entire book. It's a first person narrative. So you really have a front row seat to her like psychological unraveling as this goes on. And I really think that is something that real estate agents will probably relate to because you guys work with clients all the time who are in the throes of the biggest investment they'll ever make. I mean, buying a house is so emotionally fraught. So I really do think this book is sort of it takes that emotion to the very extreme.
Yeah, it's really how far would someone go to win a
Exactly.
house, right?
Yes,
We're
right.
talking about bidding war stress, open house anxiety, the emotional chaos that buyers feel when
Hmm.
the house is like, oh, this is perfect, and I'm worried that 20 other people are also going to feel the same way.
Right.
And I love this is a dark comedy thriller. Would that be fair to
Exactly.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that, and gosh, I think it is such a great title, and it's funny that it really, to my knowledge, I'm sure other writers have tried to tackle this topic, but probably not in the exact way that you did, and I think that is a really fun experience. Where did you sort of research the Margot character? Was it from experiences you've had yourself or conversations you've had with realtors since you've been in that industry? Tell us about where that came from.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that you haven't read this before. I mean, that is why I decided to write the book, actually. So I sort of, I was a journalist. I felt a little bit creatively unfulfilled. I'd reached sort of this point in my career where I sort of was looking for something else, and I thought I'm just going to try writing fiction for fun because I have this idea, and I sort of cannot believe that nobody has done this already because the house hunt is such an emotionally like it's this kind of anxiety ridden thing. So the stakes feel so high when you're in it. So I thought it would make sort of the perfect context for a thriller. And yeah, I was shocked that no one else had done it yet. I based Margot on a lot of different things. I mean, so yeah, I covered real estate for a long time, including during the time period that the book takes place in. So during the pandemic, I wrote a cover story actually for Washingtonian Magazine all about the COVID housing boom. And that
Right.
I think I got a lot of I mean, I didn't realize when I was reporting that story at the time that I would then repurpose that material for a book later. But I think that is actually when the seed was planted because for that story, I interviewed dozens and dozens of house hunters and agents, all going through this extremely difficult process of trying to buy a house when there are 50 other bids, and half of them are all cash, and the open house lines are around the block. And so I did talk to house hunters. Luckily, nobody who was willing to go quite to the extremes that Margot goes to in the book. But it was very normal at that time to write letters, write emotional letters with your
Sure.
offer, or to do things to try to get in the back door, to like try to you would circle the neighborhood and see, well, God, that house is really cool. Maybe I'll just go knock on the door and see if there's any chance they'll sell it to me, because there was such a shortage of inventory. There still is a big inventory problem, as your audience knows. So there were these things that were kind of like that were very normal to do, but that walked right up to the edge of like being too far. So when I decided to write the book, I thought, well, I'm just going to let my main character, because this is fiction now, she is going to take it over that line into the I've gotten too far territory.
Yeah, I love that, and so much of humor is taking a simple premise and then exaggerating it, right? And so that's essentially what the Margot character is this idea
Hmm.
of going in and doing some routine sort of looking up online of how maybe the motivations of these of the sellers might be, and who they are, so I can gain a slight advantage, and then ramping that up and escalating that up into where it becomes absurd in her efforts. And what a funny thing. So I see it as this dark comedy and also a thriller. When you started writing it, was it more of a comedy or more of a thriller at first? Were you sure, or did you want to marry those two at the same time?
So the first idea that I had was the twist that comes late in the book. So I can't tell you what that is without, because that would ruin the book. But the twist is very much thriller-esque, right? So I guess if we're talking about what was the first, where did I actually start from? I started from the twist, so I guess that would be like starting from the point of the thriller. But I also knew I wanted the main character to not be like your traditionally likable main character. Like I knew she was going to be like, she was going to be like a Walter White, like a behaving badly main character,
Sure.
who hopefully you would still decide that you want to tag along with for the whole ride anyway, and maybe even start to root for, even as she does like really despicable things. So I thought, a way to make her, even if you're appalled by what she's doing, I still wanted you to maybe like her. So
Yeah.
to me, humor was the way into that. So she does have a pretty darkly funny inner monologue that you get to be privy to as the reader. In particular, because what we're talking about is buying. Her budget is $1.3 million, so she's buying a nice, pretty nice, high end home. She comes herself from very humble beginnings and is very self-made. So she's now a PR. She's a publicist in the DC area. Her husband's a government lawyer. So she has made this life for herself, unlike a lot of the people that she sees around her who, from her point of view, had everything handed to them. Like they're, trust fund, kids who have all cash, from their parents to put down on a house. They all went to the right Ivy League schools, which she did not. So you are privy to the way she is kind of perceiving these people around her. And so there is a lot of commentary on sort of class that comes along with the book. And she just feels like she's had to work, 10 times as hard as all these people. So she is owed this house, and she's going to have to like take matters into her own hands to get it.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny. I just started, my fiance and I started, we said, well, let's read a book together that just to do something together. And
That's
so
so
we were,
fun.
yeah, she was talking about joining a book club, and then she's like, I don't know if I have time for that. I'm like, we could just do a book club ourselves.
Yes,
So,
my husband and I sometimes do that, and it's fun because then you have somebody to talk about
well,
the
we
book
just
with.
started reading, what are we reading now? Agatha Christie's, and then there was none, which we used to be 10 Little
Wow.
Indians, right? Which I see a lot of Agatha Christie. I don't know if she was a major inspiration for you, but she is darkly funny, darkly funny. I mean, one of just the funniest writers. And obviously she's more mystery than thriller, but thriller too, I guess. And so I see a little bit of that. I don't know if she was one of your heroes, but it certainly seems, as you're talking, just the way that she writes. I guess that's a nice
Yeah.
compliment.
Well, that is
But
a huge compliment. I will say, even, I think Agatha Christie's work is just so sort of in the culture now that even if you don't realize she was an influence, she probably was. I mean, I think
yeah,
you can see threads of Agatha Christie in a lot of really successful modern commercial thrillers. So yeah, she probably did work her way in there somewhere.
Who were your fiction heroes growing up?
So, oh gosh. Well, as I already said, like I didn't ever think I was going to be an author. So
Right.
a lot of my writing heroes were actually more nonfiction because that's just where
Sure.
I was focused. Like I'm a huge David Gran fan. I don't know if you know him. He's a New
Yeah.
Yorker writer, but he's written a few books that are like historical nonfiction, but they're so good that they read like novels. Um, but I will say, when I was thinking about creating a female protagonist who does some bad things, I definitely did think a lot about Gone Girl,
Sure.
and the character of Amy Dunn.
Right.
I would say I don't think Margot and Amy Dunn are very different, but they are the same in that they are not afraid to really like go the extra mile for what they want.
Now, what do you think the book says about status neighborhoods? Let's talk about that because
Mhm.
that's a big theme in the book. Like who gets in, who gets priced out, who gets judged. There's a lot of that in here. So talk about status.
Yeah, for sure. So Margot, as I already mentioned, she comes from this sort of working class background. She definitely has like a bit of a chip on her shoulder because of that, and like I think a little bit of an inferiority complex. And so I think she sees this sort of Instagram perfect life as like the thing that will make her valuable. So she wants the perfect house and the perfect marriage. She's trying to have a baby, and her and her husband are dealing with some infertility issues, which further add to her already really high stress level. Um, but she wants the perfect baby. She wants what she perceives, or maybe more specifically, what she thinks the outside world perceives as the perfect life. And that will then mean that she herself has arrived. So she wants to achieve a certain level of status in the book. Because that's what that's the messaging that's being directed at her, from Pinterest and from Instagram. And, I do think there is there's been a heightening of that because of social media for sure. I mean, I don't know that. I actually would be really curious to know what most real estate agents would say about that, because I think there probably was a time when no one was watching HGTV and no one was scrolling all of the beautiful design accounts on Instagram, and so maybe they didn't know that they wanted to ask for unlacquered brass fixtures in every bathroom, and all of these things that now are these kind of status symbols.
Well, I think too, speaking of social media, I think it has certainly made real estate more popular in sort of the ethos of what we look at, and because
Hmm.
there's an aesthetic to it that I think, social media and Instagram in particular, just is very sort of obviously attracted to.
Hmm.
And I think also too, there's the idea of perfection is really kind of like what's the aesthetic ideal is what
Yeah.
we see a lot on of course, well, now with AI making everything perfect, including ourselves, our homes, our meals. And it really is it's really an interesting sort of thing that we never had before. So there was
Yeah.
always, there's Photoshop's been around for maybe 30 years, but it wasn't quite that sort of that technology wasn't pushed in our face every 10 seconds as we scroll, and now we're seeing it everywhere. And so there's this idea that we have to look a certain way, that we have to have a home that looks a certain way, or we have to at least make our home look a certain way when we're presenting it to others online, right? There's
Hmm.
this idea that our lives have to look perfect, and I think
Yeah.
we have to win this sort of status race. And can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how has I mean, what do you think? Where do you think we're headed with this
Oh boy.
idea of everything being so perfect? Curious, just what your thoughts are there.
I don't know if I can predict the future, but I will say that exactly what you're describing is part of the immense pressure that Margot feels in the book, and that she's very much cracking under. I mean, she's experiencing a real mental break in this book, whether she herself realizes it or not. But definitely all of this pressure that she's, this imagery that you're talking about that gets fed to us. I mean, the fact that it just looks, I think people start to think it's very normal to have a perfect looking house. I mean, that's like what you need. That's like the standard that you have to meet, because everybody on Instagram looks like their life is perfect. And no, of course, what you don't see on Instagram are all of the outtakes, that are not perfect. So yeah, so Margot is very much cracking under that pressure. Where do I think we're going from here? I mean, gosh, unfortunately, you mentioned AI. AI is only becoming more and more pervasive. So I don't think this problem is going to go away. um, but like I told you a minute ago that I'm 40, and what I really started to kind of think about is how no one really knows what a 40-year-old looks like anymore. Like,
Right.
because I mean, if you're not actually getting, injected or filled or whatever in real life, like you can have the Instagram filter that makes you look like you have been. So I'm like, what am I supposed to like? What does it actually mean to look your age anymore? So it's sort of the same pressure, but with those same pressures and those same like kind of Instagram perfect filters are also applied to housing, to homes.
Yeah, I do see another novel for you where a 40-year-old woman rejects all of the perfectionist sort of technology that
Yeah.
and says, "I'm going to exist in this world as I am," and sort of the way that people react to her, treat her. I think that would make for well, certainly funny premise, but really something that would speak to a lot of people at that stage of life, especially
For
women.
sure.
And we know what Instagram does to young girls. By the time they're
Yeah.
13, it's really bad. But certainly for women who are at that stage of life and as adults, I think, gosh, it's got to not be fun to think like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't look how I feel that I'm supposed to look, which is such a thing that shouldn't matter, right? And
Yeah,
yet
and the bar keeps moving, which is so it's just like an unwinnable. It feels like an unwinnable battle.
women have it tough, and I think women have it. I mean, we know why. We know that women have it tough, but women have to be so much more. I think, and I think social media has really made this more challenging for women in particular, because you are seeing these women leading these at least perceived amazingly idealized lives, right, where they're
Mhm.
doing, especially a lot of really successful real estate realtors who are women, really try to showcase this life of, look at how I'm a perfect mother, I'm a perfect realtor, I go to the gym every morning, I have this perfect latte, or my food is perfect. It's incredibly, it must be exhausting to showcase that kind of lifestyle. And they do it for maybe branding reasons, but there is this pressure, I think, for all of us, but certainly women, adult women, to be seen as, I can do everything. and
Yeah.
um and I think
Well,
that's I think that's problematic, right?
yeah, and certainly, again, I don't know if this is intentionally or not, but you're definitely hitting on a big theme in the book, which is that there is a lot of female rage in this book.
Yeah. Mhm.
Margot has this like really like kind of constantly simmering rage within her that propels her to do a lot of these horrible things. Um, but I think that rage for Margot is in large part a product of all of this pressure that she feels. And so she's just decided that she's going to lean really hard into that rage now and let it carry her,
Now,
let it
as
carry her
you're
over the
writing
finish line.
about this character, and you're so used to writing about real people in the
Hmm.
journalism world, did there was there ever any point where, as Margot's becoming more and more unhinged, wanting this property, that you started to see parts of yourself in Margot, or was there ever a thought
Sure.
of like, oh, this is coming from my brain? I sort of, you write what you know, right? So I
Oh,
don't know
yeah.
how much of that you could identify.
Um, well, I will say that Margot and I do not share the same views on a lot of things, but for sure, I relate to her rage, and I felt it was actually very cathartic to get to write that part of the character because, I think if you're like a sentient woman in today's world, you do feel some anger, and so to get
Yeah.
to, but you can't, but in polite society, we don't get to act on it the way that Margot does in the book. So to allow a fictional character to really go full tilt right into that anger was really, really fun. And yeah, yeah. So I do that. Absolutely, there is a lot of me in Margot for sure.
I think that's important for us to realize too, just in society, is that women, another thing that we really don't encourage them to do is to be angry. We don't like, men are allowed to be angry, right? We're allowed to be angry, but women are often not. And so this idea of, of course, women are, they're human beings. They have anger. It's normal. It's healthy, actually. And the idea of speaking to women's anger, I think, is really important. And so I'm glad that you're tackling it in a funny way and an over the top way at times. But I think it's really important for us to recognize that it is tough for women to be able to express their anger. It's certainly in public, or it's just not perceived as the ideal, for which is completely insane, obviously. And men aren't supposed to cry and women aren't supposed to get angry, right? And so
That's true.
and thankfully that's changing, I believe. But I'm glad that you're speaking to this, because it is something that a lot of women can relate to, especially like as realtors. They have to stay calm under pressure. They're not supposed to. I have a woman who is one of the most successful agents in Chicago. She comes on my show often, and she's beloved. I mean, she's a lovely human being. She will say, "You cannot believe how people talk to me."
Oh, I
And
bet.
even though she's been in this business 20 plus years, and she is as sweet as, I mean, she's tough, as she
Hmm.
should be, but she's absolutely fair and honest. And she
Hmm.
will say, in particular, the way men will speak to her, she doesn't complain about it. She's just like, "Just so you know." And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's amazing to me that happens. And it's like, oh yeah, as men we forget that a lot of times, that women really have it's tough. It's tough to be a woman in business. It's tough to be a woman who's assertive. I think that is just difficult in general, and it's something that as men we need to be more compassionate towards.
Oh, yes. Well, that's good on you for saying that. I do think Margot was cathartic for me to write, and I do think I mean, hopefully cathartic for a lot of women to read that character too, because yeah, Margot is a very successful professional woman, but also trying to be a mom, also trying to keep the marriage intact. And yeah, she is trying to have it all, which is the thing. It's so funny, no one really ever says to men, you should try to have it all, but women get fed this message pretty regularly, that we have to try to have it all, which is an insane thing to try to have. No one can actually, really have it all and maintain any kind of a balance. So yes, Margot's cracking under that pressure. I certainly have felt that pressure myself in my own life. I know my friends have. I think any working professional woman has felt this way.
Oh yeah, us men, we get other bad messages. We don't get that one. We get other
Yeah,
ones
that's
that are
true. Yeah,
that are equally awful, but not in the same way. And
Mhm.
I think it's important for real estate agents. 67% of them are women, so it's important for us to really even have this conversation in a sort of lighthearted way. But also it's important to know that, especially women realtors who are supposed to be just so perfect, and again,
Mhm.
it's unfortunately something that needs to be sort of considered. And of course, it's funny, you're talking about social media. Whenever I see somebody who has the courage to post something imperfect, and I don't mean somebody catches them slipping or falling or something silly, but more like they're having a really bad day and they post about something that is imperfect. Maybe they're something happened, or that they wish to share, but it's so courageous. And it's interesting that sometimes people will look down on those people who post that stuff, saying, "Oh, look, now they're aiming for sympathy." And it's like, well, you can't have it both ways, right? We can't have this idea that you only post the beauty and not sort of the imperfections of life, and then shame the person for sharing what's actually more human and real. And so
Yeah.
I love that your book really goes into that more human and real side. And again, obviously in an exaggerated state, but something that we all have those thoughts, and we all have those imperfections, and everybody's got problems, and everybody's
Mhm.
on the verge of committing a crime in their mind, and just trying to realize, okay, I'm not going to go out and do that, but I did think that. And that's perfectly okay. Let's talk about sort of what do you think that this book gets right about buyer emotions?
Well, I do think, and I feel like I'm really preaching to the choir here, given who your audience is, but I do think that when you're buying a house, it feels like the most important thing in the
Yeah.
whole universe. I mean, I really do think that, especially if you're buying in a seller's market where it's very competitive, I think you get blinders on and you just nothing else matters. I mean, and with good reason, because for most people, it is the most money they're ever going to spend on anything. But I also think it's not only financial stakes, it's emotional stakes. So I think, everybody sort of brings their own sort of personal baggage to what it means to be a homeowner and what a dream home means. So that is a big theme in the book also. Margot comes from a family that had a pretty challenged relationship with homeownership. And that's a big driver for her. I mean, she sort of wants to go out now and create for herself the dream life that she feels, her parents were not able to provide for her. She feels like she was sort of deprived of that growing up. Whereas her husband, Ian, comes from this very sort of, kind of nice, salt of the earth, Midwestern family where he grew up, in a nice, in a loving, stable home. So what I wanted to explore through their dynamic was this idea of all of the emotional kind of personal baggage that people bring to the house hunt, because it's very different for these two people in this marriage. I mean, Margot is so dead set on getting the dream house. She really feels like it's the thing that's missing in her life, and she really is convinced that if she doesn't go out and grab it for herself, that it's not just going to happen for her. She's going to have to work really hard for it. Whereas Ian, is sort of just like it's all going to work out kind of guy. Like he's like, if it's meant to be, this one will, if this house is meant to be ours, we'll get it. Like that's his attitude. And it's driving Margot crazy, that she's sort of having to carry the bulk of the stress of the house hunt.
Yeah.
But what it comes down to is that they come from these very different backgrounds where, Ian just doesn't feel the same urgency and the same hunger for this that Margot does. And I think that I do think, based on having bought, a home myself and also having been a reporter talking to real life homeowners, I do think that the book does get that part right about the house hunt.
Yeah, often one party or one person in the buy side wants it a little bit more, or it's more important that they win that than maybe the other person, and that becomes challenging for the relationship. It becomes challenging for the realtor, and it's tough because that person who is so invested really wants their partner, if they're if they have a partner, to feel the same way, and it
Hmm.
can be very frustrating to have the other person go like, we'll find something else, it's fine.
Yeah,
And
and maybe even if it's not like relationship drama, even if it's just, when I was a kid, the most the most beautiful house on my block was a Cape Cod, and that's a dream house to me, and that's what I want. That's the only kind of house I want. Like even if it's just stuff like that, I do think we all bring our own emotional, personal histories to homes. To being a homeowner is so connected with the American dream, for better or for worse. And so I think we just put so much weight onto the house hunt.
yeah, I do. I wanted to get. I really just have one last question for you, because this is
Sure.
a hot topic in real estate. Some argue, for realtors in particular, not for the public, but some argue this could be a fair housing violation. Some states say
Mm.
don't do it. Now, as a consumer, this they wouldn't know this, but this idea of writing a love letter
Hmm.
to the sellers. So, what's your view on the love letter? Is it romantic? Is it manipulative? Is it both? What do you think about love letters?
So I will say I have never written one myself, but I did when we sold our last house. We received a couple love letters, and my agent uh, told me not to read them because he was like, "You should not let this.
Sure,
We should just let everyone be on an equal playing field, and we're just going to look at the bottom line and kind of what the closing terms are." And I'm really glad that he told me that, because
sure.
after we did, after we picked, the buyer and we sold the house, I did go back and looked at a couple of those, and I think I don't know that it would have changed the outcome, but I would have just felt, you know, guiltier for not having sold to this lovely couple with the adorable new puppy, and you know what I mean? Like I don't from the seller's perspective, I don't see a world in which I would ever read them.
Yeah.
Um uh from the buyer side, I mean, I don't know. I think if you feel like that's the vibe you want, like if that's what you want to do, I mean, who am I to tell you to tell you what not to do? But yeah, I mean, certainly, I think if you're saying, I do see how it could become a fair housing violation depending on the kind of
Sure,
information you're including,
sure.
in the letter, for sure.
Well, yeah, yeah, we're not saying does it work or not. It works. It's just should it be
Oh,
done
should it be
is
allowed?
well,
Yeah.
yeah, right, right. Is the idea that, and I think your agent gave you great advice when you were,
Hmm.
when you were selling. Just, don't pay attention to this because it will, of course, we're human. It will influence us, and
Yeah.
it'll influence us in a way that's probably unfair to the other people looking. And again, whether that's legal or not is a different question. But it is an interesting tactic because we know it's effective, and
Hmm.
yet the sort of the realtor boards are trying real estate boards trying to figure out is there an ethical issue here that violates some of the standards that agents are attempting to maintain. But it is funny. I'm glad you included it because especially during the pandemic, that's when we saw a lot of that, and it was interest rates were so low that buyers were just out, and everybody was competing. And as you said, you lived through those times as well. um, so I am really wanting everybody to go pick up this book. As agents, you'll love it. You'll get it. This is absolutely in your wheelhouse of experience, and if nothing else, it'll just be a cathartic moment for you because everybody's had a crazy client and everybody's had a listing where there was a crazy buyer, or that. And so this is a great opportunity for you to connect with another someone who has validated this experience in a fictional way and had a lot of fun with it, and you'll smile and laugh along the way as you go through this sort of emotional roller coaster of want versus versus outcome, I guess, and what people are willing to do to get there and to achieve the status that we all at times think like, oh, that's where the happiness is if I just get the thing, then
Hmm.
I will be happy. And it's so interesting too when you see sort of the data on happiness. I think that's talk about dream homes, and the data on happiness is really interesting, where it's like once you with salary, once you get above your basic needs and you can, you're not worried about money every month, happiness doesn't really go up as much as income goes up. It really stays fairly steady whether you make, $100,000 or $1 million. It's not much different. Below that, yes, there's a lot of unhappiness, but it's interesting. So it's a good reminder for all of us too to think about, what really brings us happiness. Is it that thing that I don't have yet? Is it that achievement? Is it that item that I want to buy? And what are we really looking for? And for most of us, is we're looking for connection. We're looking for
Hmm.
relationships and things like that. So I think this book touches on all of that. So I'm really hoping that our audience goes out and picks this up. It's a bestseller. It's it's maybe going to be on television someday. And Marisa has really just become part of this conversation. And so we're so happy to have you. The book is Best Offer Wins. Find it anywhere books are sold. Certainly pick it up on Amazon if you'd like. Oh, and there's an audiobook version as well. Do you recommend, if people were to choose one or the other, what do you think? Do you like the audiobook version?
I mean, I think you can't go wrong. Here it is. Sorry, here's the cover. I've got to do my little promo. Here's what it
Please.
looks like. I mean, I love a hardcover book. I'm personally like I like to read a real book, but if you're an audiobook person, I think the audiobook is super fun. And I that was actually a really fun thing that I got to be a part of was the auditions for the
Yeah.
person for the voice actress. And Chia Court is the actor who reads the audiobook, and she just totally knocks it out of the park. So you cannot go wrong.
We have a lot of audiobook listeners who are realtors because they listen as they're driving from place
Oh,
to
for
place.
sure.
So,
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Well,
so
I think this
definitely
will be fun.
consider, if that works better for you, check that out on Audible. And again, Marisa is our guest. She is. What's next? You have another novel in you?
Yes. Well, gosh, I sure hope so because this is my job now. I do have another novel in the works. It's not real estate specific like the first one, but it is similar in tone. Another dark comedy thriller, takes place at least partially in the DC area. So, yeah, so stay tuned for that one.
I love it. Well, follow Marisa on her Instagram, which is Marisa Kashino, which is Kashino, and we'll have a link to her Instagram as well as the book on our show notes. Marisa, thank you so much for your time today. I know this was a departure for you as far as interviews go, but I appreciate you coming on our show, and we really hope our audience supports you. And thank you for writing about our industry and really just having fun with it and making it. There's a lot of just negativity right now aimed at realtors and within our world, and something like this is really fun for us, and we appreciate it, and really, again, cathartic as well at times. So thank you for doing that, and we
Well,
will we will become, your big fans. Write her reviews on Amazon. That helps as well. So get the book, let Amazon know what you think about the book so that she can get in front of more and more people. And any last words for our audience?
Just thank you. Thank you guys so much. And it was a pleasure to get to have this chat with you.
Awesome. On behalf of our audience, thanks, Marisa. And on behalf of Marisa and myself, thank you to the audience for sticking around to the end. We appreciate you. As always, the best way that you can help us continue to grow is by telling a friend. Think of another agent in your office that would benefit from hearing this great conversation with Marisa and send them a link. Also, thanks to our sponsors. And we will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks, Marisa.
Thank you.